system on thought AI, military science fiction podcast. Untold stories every Wednesday, military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Today, we are very fortunate and blessed to have Jonathan Yanez on board. And Jonathan, hey, if
Hello,
you're
thanks for having
unfamiliar
me,
with
guys.
Jonathan, I'm not going to try and introduce everything that he's done, but I think a few words. I mean, I know him mostly as, author, publisher, filmmaker, just general all-around awesome guy. And we were just talking about the fact
Billionaire playboy
billionaire
philanthropist.
playboy, secret agent, family therapist. Like every time we talk to Jonathan, you just come away pumped. And I don't want to like set him up for failure here, but he does this so easily that I know I'm not doing that. So we're really excited to have him on board. We are going to talk about what Jonathan's been up to lately, but the topic for today is going to be AI, but AI in the reference of military science fiction. And as we've we're talking about this to start with. AI is changing so fast right now that you kind of have to play, a little hand wavium with AI, but then you can also try and be as hard science fiction or realistically with what it is right now with language models. So I think we'll get into that because we can definitely talk about how it's being used in, currently the way Israel's using AI, the way Ukraine is using AI, targeting systems, things like that, and then what we think that may happen in the future and effects that might have on the military. And then even further in the future, another conversation we were having about like everybody loves their snarky AIs, but then you look at what's really happening with like AI girlfriends, and that's a little scary. I don't know if we want those snarky AIs. So,
Do you want a snarky AI girlfriend?
Exactly. I don't know if I need that in the battlefield. I'll never leave my sleeping bag. So, anyway, Jonathan, can you give us a quick intro to what you're working on right now, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I just first wanted to say thank you guys for having me on. I don't take it for granted. This is something I was been looking forward to. So thanks for spending your time with me today too. Yeah, just looking towards the future. We have a couple of releases. Like God's blessed us to be at the point of our publishing path where we're actually trying to release less books now and make them more impactful, bigger pushes behind less books. And then on the film side, we've been able to sign some contracts to do some feature-length films, where before we were only doing like, a pilot episode here or a sci-fi short there. So yeah, just like keeping our heads down, just like grinding, to the extent too, almost to my detriment. Like I'm just like working so much. I'm getting calls. They're like, I don't know if you guys want to talk about this, but they're like, hey, are you guys near the riots? Are you guys okay? I'm like, what? There's riots here? What's going on? And I have to go look at the news. I'm like, oh, there is riots. Because I just have like my nose like so far into the grindstone every day.
And that's probably the better place to be.
100%. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
That's where I wish I was.
Josh never leaves his basement office.
No, I'm on the main floor now. No, my wife watches the news all the time, and I just put headphones in and walk through because I don't care. I ain't got time for that
for readers
nonsense.
that might not be familiar with your work, Jonathan, probably good places to start would be Galactic Guardians or Forsaken Mercenary for military science fiction readers. Is that best place right now?
Yeah, so Galactic Guardians is our most recent completed sci-fi series. There's Forsaken Mercenary before that, and then Gateway to the Galaxy before that.
Awesome. And those are
Gateway to the Galaxy was the one that was kind of Green Lantern.
Yeah, so I
read the first couple books in that, I remember.
Oh, thanks, Rick.
It was a long time ago. It was like 2017 or something, I think.
Yes, you have a good memory. I have a hard time remembering what I did last weekend, but I think you're right. I think it was 2017.
Well, I have a hard time remembering what I did last weekend, but 10 years ago, easy.
Yeah, you're right, though. It is. I was looking at different IPs that I loved whose fan bases weren't being served. So at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of Stargate stuff coming out. At the time, there wasn't a whole lot of Green Lantern stuff coming out, and I love both those IPs. So I thought, like, what could I do that, making our own characters, how can we kind of incorporate what those feel like? And it was a fun series to write.
That's awesome.
It's a really great piece of advice too, because when you're looking at writing in a genre,
right,
you want to service the fan base. You want to know who you're writing for, But more importantly, you want to know what you want them to feel when you're reading the book, because too many people write like, I have this cool idea for a book and it's going to have this great epic space battle. That's awesome. You're not making a movie, you're writing a book. How are they going to feel?
You're gonna feel epic.
Yeah, I think there's like a, a Venn diagram where it's like what you want to write. You should never sell it. Write what you want to. But I think within that Venn diagram, you could find something that other people enjoy too. So you can do both. You could write towards a market of what people enjoy and also write what you enjoy. I don't want to name drop because I don't like people who name drop, but I was hanging out with one of the creators of Cobra Kai over the weekend, and he said the same thing when he was creating Cobra Kai. He's like, I know if I liked this,
Mhm.
other people are going to like it as well. So write for yourself. He created the Cobra Kai TV show because it was something he wanted to watch and he would enjoy. And he just had faith that there was other people out there like him.
I don't like people who name drop. Let me tell you the names of a few people who name drop.
One. Okay, that was my one name drop.
Well, I don't
Well,
like the
and
name drop, but I was hanging out with these dudes in the base in the lobby of the Bellagio playing D&D once, and it landed me a bunch of contracts. So,
well, it kind of goes without saying, and I want to kind of jump into AI too here pretty quick, but a lot of people, a lot of authors now are chasing the market, and that's kind of been a trend for the last several years. But if you're just looking at, how to make the most money, go write romance or something like
You're
that,
in the
something
wrong
that
genre.
just sells bazonkers of dollars. But if you're not interested in that, you're gonna have a really hard time writing it, especially because to make any progress in it, you're gonna have to read a lot of it, and I don't really have any interest in reading any of that, and I can't write that kind of stuff. The idea of writing a steamy scene really just, I don't know, man.
You're missing
I
out,
can't do
Josh.
it.
This is a place
I
where you
can't
could
do it.
grow as an author.
Oh man, I know. Like, woo!
Wah, wah, wah.
Uh, but
on my
I
X
mean,
account, I have a Venn diagram of what you love, what sells, and what you're capable of writing.
Right,
And where those three things meet is where you're at.
right.
And I don't know how many people tell me that they found Against All Odds and they're like, oh my gosh, I was looking for something like this, but there isn't anything out there. And I'm like, and you now know why I wrote it. Because I finished all of David's books and I finished the Jack Campbell books and I finished a couple other series. And there is a million infantry based series. Nick Cole's great Galaxy's Edge, Rick Partlow's Drop Trooper, name dropping. Um, and there's tons of fans of the infantry or powered armor genre are well serviced. Fans
Richard
of
Fox's Iron Dragoons.
Yeah.
yeah. Fleet sci-fi though, no. It's a huge market, untapped market, and unfortunately, it's just more difficult to do right, and so you have a lot less of it. And maybe it's probably because it is a smaller portion of the market than the people who like the infantry stuff. But you really gotta know who you're writing for. And yeah, it can be just you, but only if you're pretty sure that you are also share a market with a whole bunch of other people.
Well, Green Lantern in particular is one of those their properties, I guess, where fans keep getting like bad things. So giving them something good is going to make them very
I
happy.
have hope for the new series though.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
like
know.
the
Well,
actors.
I'm ready to get kicked down again. It
Uh-huh.
happens. So let's jump into AI. I think we live in a time actually where I feel like it's very difficult to write AI because the science is catching up very rapidly with expectations around what AI could be or what it actually is, or like AI is thrown out really as a kind of a marketing term, and we have companies that are pushing it to try and make, get investment. They keep talking about AGI, general AI, general intelligence. It's just around the corner. It's just 2 weeks away. Well, is that being applied to, military operations? It is in a lot of ways, like advanced targeting is happening with AI, and it's already happened where humans were going to be the fail-safe on that, but then they didn't do that, and the AI made the targeting decisions. So, are these things that you've been thinking about in your work, Jonathan? Or, I mean, when you proposed this idea, what was something that was on top of your mind with it?
Yeah, I just think like I love imagination, right? Like as we all do. I love just like staring at a blank canvas and having my mind start filling in all the pieces that don't exist. But I was talking to somebody, I not trying not to name drop, I forgot who it was, but they were saying like basically they were talking to somebody who was high up in the military and asking them like what kind of AI applications can we expect in the future? And they said something crazy. They're like, okay, in the next 5 to 10 years, what can we expect? And they're like, whatever you can imagine. And I'm like, oh my Lanta,
Well, that's
because
pretty
I
cool.
have a pretty wild imagination. So, and it makes sense. Like we're growing at such an exponential rate that it probably is going to be anything that you can imagine is going to be possible.
I
Yeah.
want
Well, and I
to.
think for me in
To quote,
particular,
to quote Han Solo, I can imagine quite a lot.
I usually I usually go the even when I'm trying to imagine AI or computer technology, I usually go in the too safe direction where I'm like this would be okay. And then I do that and then I hand it off to one of my buddies and they're like, we're already doing that, right? And I'm like, ugh, okay, I gotta like extrapolate a little more. Because you're right, it's just so crazy what's possible now to what's known. And I mean to simple things like even with ChatGPT or any of the other AI programs that you can use and interact with, I have a fairly simple idea of like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do with it, and then I watch a YouTube video somewhere, and I'm like, I didn't know I could do that. Like, what? That's a thing,
You have to
Like
nerf
I
it
watched
to a
it.
certain
I
extent.
watched a guy talk about instructing his AI to like basically comb through internet articles of the day and then email him a summary of the article and in that summary generate a narrative description of those combined articles and include links. And I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. Like that's crazy. And so like thinking of what we could do 5, 10 years down the road, 100 years down the road, 1,000 years down the road. It's really just
A
it's
million years.
limitless possibilities, literally. And one of the things I try to I don't know if it's just me like giving the nose down approach to AI, but like in my stories, especially weaponized, I've got a lot of high tech, like kind of cyberpunkish technology with implants and computer AI and stuff like that. And I try to take the Peter Hamilton approach of differentiating the different types of AIs, because when you say AI, especially in science fiction, you think something like along the lines of like Terminator AI, right? Where they're completely sentient and they're, just doing their own thing. But there's different levels. You can have an AI that's basically just an assistant and they really don't have agency in what they're doing. They can do their own thing, but they have to be instructed to do that thing. Um, and so what I try to do is differentiate between the types of levels. Like in Peter F. Hamilton's books, he's got like a restricted AI or a sentient AI or, something like that. And so I like to kind of, for the reader at least, differentiate between like this is not just a sentient AI entity thing that's doing its own thing. It's more of a companion, more of a helper than just something else.
I just read a
Um,
scene with Hamilton where the character is in a situation where they're cut off from the network and they upload like a limited version of an AI. And the first thing it says was resources restricted. I can only do X, Y, and Z. And so it's
yeah,
almost like magic where you have to establish like these are the rules. This is what it can do. Okay, now the character has to try and make things happen with the limited tool
yep,
set they have.
I did that with a bad guy AI in the Interstellar Bounty, well, Star Bounty series. The Because its main self was in this what they call a quantum core, which is a really expensive and complex thing that there's not very many of. And part of its main goal is to get more so it could reproduce, but it uploaded like limited versions of itself to go do its bidding, which weren't nearly as smart, which is the only reason the main character survived because these things weren't the whole entity.
Right.
I hate to be the party pooper, but what we have AI as whatever it is calling AI isn't actually AI.
No.
We're
I
actually
Well, it's
agree.
not. No.
I was
nowhere
going to say that
near
eventually.
nowhere near real AI.
It's large language program
Yeah,
models.
Yeah.
these language models are great and all, but you have to remember when you're interacting with these language models, you're interacting with a server farm in Arizona that's consuming more water than the city of Phoenix does every day. And enough power that if they had their own nuclear reactor, they might just have enough power to run these things indefinitely. So it's not like you can take that and put it
Yeah.
in a robot or in a drone.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Right.
And because of that, all of this basically revolves around signal and radios and controlling drones. Now in Ukraine, they're doing the fiber optic things, which is up to 45 kilometers, which I thought was
Mhm.
crazy. But
And
then
now
you see
battlefields are
games,
covered in fiber optic cable.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see Russian soldiers running around with shears, and then there's an explosion a little ways away. So it's all stuff to remember. Every time someone comes up with an advance for language learning models or for autonomous weapons, there's always somebody else who's going like, okay, well, how can we defeat this? And when we're talking about science fiction in the future, obviously computer technology is going to be more advanced, and you're going to have the capability of putting these language learning modules in a ship or in a smaller unit package. But there's always like, if you took, say, Grok, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put Grok on a spaceship, the amount of thermal energy generated using Grok to run that spaceship would be, you would never hide that ship ever. You'd be a shining star everywhere you went because of the amount of heat required to
Well,
run.
that's going to be the
language
case
learning
though
module.
with any spaceship that's going to be like a combat spaceship in the future. They're going to have to come up with some way to dispose of heat.
Oh yeah,
The
absolutely.
heat from Grok is going to be minuscule compared to the heat from like their fusion reactor or whatever,
Well, no, because the same way that they spot pot farms from orbit with thermal imaging, if you look at like one of the server farms that runs these language models, it's like a
Well, I
star.
know, I agree. I said that that's going to
I
be
know.
you're going to have to get rid of the waste heat from a lot of stuff from
We just
space.
shunt the thermal cost into hyperspace, man. It's fine. You
I
just like
actually do
make
Yeah.
that sometimes in
Well,
some of
but
my
if you look
books.
at a Navy ship though that has like if you look at a Navy ship that's running reactors and has computers stuff like that, their thermal imaging is not nearly as huge
Well, that's because they're in the
as that.
water.
Well, I think like anything, like we've talked about this before, is there's always a cost, right? So what's the cost for the capability, and what do you how is that making you more combat effective in the situation that you're being faced with? And if you need that, like if there's some reason to have that kind of computational power so you can then fight the enemy that's using it
Don't
for
give you
whatever reason.
incorrect facts.
Right. And that's the other thing, like Josh was just mentioning. Like right now, we're in an okay place where humans are still making enough information that the AI can go out, parse it, give you a summary. But like we're rapidly reaching a place where AI is making all the stories that are out there. They're making up garbage, and now they're just summarizing garbage back to us. And so, like an
Right.
important skill that your characters could need to come up with that we're dealing with right now is like, how do I determine? Like the AI is really like my dumb little brother where every now and then he says something good, or I can go send him out to get me an apple and he'll do that. But
Right.
really he doesn't like if I ask him to do anything more, I got to realize he's going to be stupid, you know? And that's the human skill. So that's a place.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think one of the things you need to think about too when you're creating something like that is the limitations
Yeah.
of what the program can do or what the intelligence can do. And I'm curious, Jonathan, if you've created any interesting limitation because you do a lot of far future, a lot of space opera that's not like really limited to military, and you've got a lot of cool technology in your story. So I'm curious if you've come up with some type of AI system that's incorporated into your story, but did you set some hard rules, some limitations onto what those programs or systems could do to give your characters agency? Because if you give your AI like just it's limitless and it's powerful and all of this, it doesn't really give your characters a whole lot to do.
Are we allowed to talk conspiracy theories on
Yes.
this?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Go for
I
it.
just
You
want to make
are
sure.
We love
required
a good
to,
conspiracy
actually.
theory.
This is sci-fi, man. You have to have conspiracy.
And really, the only difference between a conspiracy theory and facts is a couple of days.
Ah, true.
Yeah, well, this is your
Unfortunately.
guy's house, so I figured I'd ask permission first. I just didn't want to go into your
That's kind of
refrigerator
you.
and help
Appreciate
myself. So yeah, so like what Josh was saying, like I'm understanding my own mortality more and more as I even try to imagine where we're going to be. So what I've done in the past in a series is like had an advanced civilization that had these AIs, and for some reason they just disappeared. Because getting into the conspiracy theory, maybe there was an advanced civilization here on our Earth way, way, way back in the day, and maybe something happened to them. Maybe they went into hiding. Maybe they destroyed each other. Who knows? Maybe they're still here. So I think that there is definitely those storylines where trying to imagine AI is so much fun for me because I get to admit to myself how I can't imagine what it would be like 1,000, 100 years from now, 10 years from now. I can't even imagine it's
Right.
gonna be like 10 years from now. So then that kind of
I
like
have a
leads.
I have a theory based on nothing but my knowledge of humanity, uh, that if we ever come up with truly sentient AI, the first thing it's going to do is ignore us and not want to talk to us at all.
Which is like that's an option nobody ever wants. Like they think that, oh, we get to battle the AI, or we get to like, no, like what if they just don't want anything to do with you?
Maybe they think we're stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
We're like idiots, and they don't want
I mean,
to talk
what
to
do your
us.
kids do when they get mad at you, right? They just want to shut you out.
Oh, what do you do when you walk past an anthill and you just look at it and you're like, and you just keep moving? I mean, it's
Right.
the same thing.
I have a friend. He's really super smart, and he actually watches the show. So hi, Brent. And we were talking about aliens once, and he's like, in reality, probably what will happen is part of sub-Saharan Africa will just like disappear underneath the dome, and we'll never know what's in there because nothing we can do will penetrate the dome, and then it'll leave one day, and we won't know why. And
I
that's
had an
about it.
idea I was talking to James with about on the show, I believe.
Yeah,
What if the
jupiter.
aliens are slightly different biochemistry and they can live on Europa,
Right.
and they go to Europa and they set up a colony and they never communicate with us. They don't want to talk to us. They don't want anything from us. They don't want to help us out. They just want Europa, and we can just go to hell.
I mean, that's our biggest how much of human, anguish is that we don't know if God talks to us or not. So I mean it's yeah, that is like a source of there's so much you could do there that I don't think of that as a conspiracy really. Like I don't know. You can even get into like the Fermi paradox and why don't we see aliens? Well, they were already here and we're
There's a
projecting it
very
afterwards.
I heard a very simple answer to the Fermi paradox
Hmm.
that nobody talks about. I talked about it, and I've heard one guy on YouTube talk about it. But the whole Fermi paradox is based on radio signals.
Right.
Why do we are getting to the point where we're not using radio signals anymore, and it's only been about 100 and some years. So if there's a alien civilization that's 100,000 years old, and there was 150 years at the beginning of their civilization when they used radio, what makes us think we would get any radio signals from these people? They might not be using any. They might have gone directly to fiber optics and you know like Starlink style signals that don't go out into space, and then go from there to something we can't even imagine, like some
Right.
kind of subspace communications that are instantaneous. Why do we think if there's aliens, we're going to get them by their radio signals?
Well, and we can view like we could look at the chemical makeups of stars and the light they're
Yeah,
emitting.
but that's something we
Right.
couldn't do back when the Fermi
Right.
paradox
We couldn't. And,
came
and even to
along.
say that, like, we don't know, we only have the sensors that we have, right? Like, if they're space spiders and they, like, interpret the world through vibrations on their hairs, like, that's just so different than the way we interpret the universe. And AI could become the same way. Like, ultimately, like an AI that can
True,
replicate
James.
itself multiple times to solve a problem, an AI that can, like, I'm James 1, 2, and 3, and now like you're not actually interacting with the real James, you're talking to James 3 and you don't even know it. Like there's so many things you can do there that I think we often get stuck inside the way we think about the world now, that real AGI, like AGI that's not an extension of us, it's something different, could just be so different. Like it's interpreting time differently. It can slow down time. It can speed up time. I mean, that's one of the things I really like in Dennis Taylor's series, the Bobiverse. Like it really makes it clear how a von Neumann probe, going out there, replicating itself, slowing down time so it experiences space travel, like in a way that doesn't make it crazy. Um, all that stuff is just really, for me, helps understand how it's hard to think about the way AI would really interpret the world because we just don't see the world that way.
See, and I find it really interesting that the guy at the DoD said whatever you can imagine, because it's whatever you can imagine that DARPA can make work that we can afford that a soldier
Mhm.
can use.
Right.
Because I don't,
And
I
they
mean,
don't necessarily care if a soldier can use it. That winds up happening they find out later that you can't use it.
Well, I mean, like, maybe there'll be a point where AI replaces everybody. I don't see that as a thing that will
Because
ever
that's
happen.
expensive. You're right. I mean, the energy is expensive.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with that. I mean, you've heard, Jonathan, the simulation theory, right?
Mhm.
Where we're
I
all
love that theory, by the way.
yeah. Well, there's only one problem with
I want
that
a better
theory
simulation.
is the
One
power
problem?
requirements.
Right.
The power requirements for a simulation that can simulate the entire universe, or even just this planet. The power requirements would be star systems worth of energy. Is it worth it to somebody in the far future to put that much energy into the simulation?
Well, that's
And
what I
that's
think
the
about.
question you really have to ask yourself about AI and how you're using it is, what is its purpose? What is it doing? How is it helping? And because it's great to have like the snarky AI, like Jay Allen's books, and not Jay Allen, Jay
Cheney.
Allenson.
Well, Cheney has. I mean, almost every
No,
one of.
no, but I mean like the Skippy, the one everybody always talks about in the military sci-fi channels, the Columbus Day guy.
Is that Craig Allenson or is that
Craig
somebody
Craig
else?
Allenson.
Craig
Thank
Allenson.
you.
Allenson. Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many Allen-ish names. Craig Allenson's Columbus Day, you got Skippy and you got Cortana and you've got all these other AIs. And like those are great and all. And I love the personality. I am writing one that's similar to that right now in the book of my work in progress, though it is limited. Those are all neat and they all make a lot of assumptions about unlimited power and unlimited resources and memory and things like that. But really, if you're writing like military sci-fi that is realistic and a little bit more down to earth, which is not what everybody does, you really do need to come at it from a perspective of like, okay, what is the purpose here? How is this being powered? How is it being used? We had a whole episode on logistics the other day. What are the logistics of having an AI in every single ship, on every single planet, in every single gun? Like Call of Duty, which I play, I know. You can get like a little AI assistant on your gun that talks to you and tells you your kill count and like good job and oh you suck, things like that. And it's also an attractive girl. So, it's like you're like, I'm trying to do good, so she'll say nice things to me. It's not really an AI, but like what are the purposes and points of those things that allow you to do it? Because like if you're investing a bunch of money to build a drone that's autonomous that blows up when it hits something, like that's a lot of money and power spent to kill one person or one thing.
Jonathan, tell us what you think.
I'm just like soaking it all in. I have no answers, just more questions.
Ask a
But
question.
riddle me this. I often think that a lot of times we give AI so much thought, like, oh, AI is going to be our downfall. I actually think humans are just going to be humans' downfall. I think they might use or not use AI in certain ways, but I've been in real life conversations where we're running ads for books, right? So somebody will leave like a nasty comment on an ad for our book, and like I don't have any time for hate, so I'm just like super fun. So I just say, "Hey, thanks so much for leaving a comment." And they'll be like, "Well, if you weren't an AI responding to me, then you wouldn't be saying that." I'm like, "No, I'm a real person." And they're like, "Oh, this is just AI garbage." I'm like, "So the humans aren't even believing other humans that they're talking to humans. They think that they're talking to AI, and it's happened more than once, guys.
No,
They
I
think like
am a
I'm an
real
AI talking
person.
to them." So that's why I think like sometimes too, like everybody's like, "Oh, AI is going to be our downfall." I'm like, maybe humans are going to be our own downfall."
I know. Well, we have
Yeah.
that's one of our problems is like we're pattern recognition machines, right? So we can't we can't believe something, or we either want to believe something is human, or as soon as we decide it's not human, we want to believe that it's not human, and it's really hard to differentiate there.
And it's
Um,
so sad because like
yeah.
I'm leaving like I have no time for hate in my life, so I just have fun with it, right? So somebody was all like in my Hunters for Hire series, they're like, "Well, there's no more Dresden books coming out, so might as well give these a try." And I responded, "That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me." But because I'm nice to their rude comments where they're expecting a human would be like, hateful back or not respond, then I get called an AI, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do anymore.
That's actually one of the easiest things for me to try to incorporate into the books is uh trying to make it convincing that people don't believe a thing, right? Like you're talking about either conspiracies or like the enemy's motivations or whatever, and people are like, oh, I don't believe that they wouldn't believe this or believe that. I'm like, just look around you and see what people don't believe, and just see it's with AI, it gets worse. People thinking you're an AI or whatever. But even without AI, completely take that out of the picture. You can say A is A, and people are like, no, it's not. No, that's not a thing. Like, of course it's
Actually,
B. How stupid are you? And so like a lot of the stuff that you work on, and you're like, people aren't going to believe this. I mean, people used to ask me all the time if I would write some of the stories or incorporate stories from my law enforcement work into my books, and I would say no, because people would not believe it.
Right.
They would say that that's not true. That didn't happen. I'm like, yeah, the craziest stuff that happened to me happened in real life. But if I put that into a book, people would be like, that's impossible. You couldn't do that. That's silly. People don't do that. And I'm like, okay, that's maybe, but it's happened. And, so really the unrealistic things that, some people get ate up about are kind of crazy. And it really comes down to, does it make sense for your character, and does it make sense for the story? And if it does, then it's fine. You don't have to have any other explanation than that.
I
it's
did.
funny, Josh, because that happens to me all the time with I almost everything that happens in the books is an historical analog. Like I found some time in history where it happened, either the battle or the way people acted or the way they responded or whatever. And I get those reviews a lot about like, oh, this isn't realistic or this would never happen. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting because it happened,
Right.
And it's one of the things I love about history is that, it's like the pilot who landed the plane on the Potomac River with no engines. That sort of thing is impossible. That sort
Sully.
of thing, yeah, Sully. That it's
Mhm.
impossible. Nobody was able to recreate that in the simulation. It was just one of those things where everything went right and he landed it and everybody lived.
Which is the biggest argument for a simulation, really, that we've got, right? Because I mean, one way that I've used AI with soldiers was basically had them. It was like the AI girlfriend, but all of the soldiers were embedded with one, and they were basically addicted to her. And it was a
The
way.
North Koreans.
Yeah, almost. Like this was an Aeon 14, and it was a way like I had a character that basically had to break free from his addiction to the AI girlfriend because he'd been controlled by her from the point that he was 18 when he enlisted and he was embedded. Like it was a big deal for him to get away from that AI so that he basically live his own life, and have his own thoughts.
Did
And
somebody
that's
come up
something.
to him in the story and say, "You might as well face it. You're addicted to love"?
Well, that's the thing that scares one of the things that scares me about like AI, the kind of place we're getting into now with, AI replicating human, just like you were saying, Jonathan, like humans desire to imprint, human characteristics on something that isn't fully there, but it still impacts the human in a really, you know, negative or important way. And that's something that I would like to see more of, even if you don't know what the AI, even if you don't know what the AI is going to do, you still can understand how the human responds to it or expects from it or gets hurt by it. You know, that's, I like to see that in stories a lot. And even because that's the thing, if you don't fully know what the AI is going to do, you do have a good idea what the human's going to do. Um,
Well,
you know,
there's another question about AI that there's been a lot of speculation in fiction mostly. I don't know about real life, that when we build a general AI, as you're talking about, that we're going to model that on the human brain and
mhm.
human modes of thinking. Well, what if you build one that's not based on human modes of thinking? What if it's a truly alien AI? Are we going to be able to interact with it? Maybe it's the only one that we can build. Maybe we can't duplicate the way a human thinks.
I
And the
would say
thing
they're
we
already
built.
not because you look at the places where they make the strongest arguments for AGI, like Go, and when AlphaGo made the changes that nobody expected, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's not anything a human would think of, when it started making those changes, and that's kind of the scariest thing. Like I love these arguments actually about AI as almost an organic system where the thing about organics is you can never fully understand why nature does something. Like we can do our best to try and figure it out, but then we'll learn something new about nature. Whereas a computer system, silicon built from the ground up, we understand the hardware, the software, If it doesn't do what we want, it's a bug, and you got to figure that out. AI is different than that. And I feel like that doesn't get a lot of attention as well. And so the thing about a military system, like a weapon system should do what you want it to do. It's got capabilities, specifications. If you're introducing AI into that, it can maybe do things that you don't expect. Like if it's trying to solve a problem in a way that a human wouldn't do it, that creates problems, And so that's something I would
Well,
see in the battlefield too.
something I've noticed, or something I've talked about since Tesla started doing their self-driving cars, or really since self-driving car idea came along, is, and it just happened a couple days ago in Arizona, is a Tesla crashed itself into another car to save a pedestrian. Now, thankfully, nobody was
Probably a
hurt,
problem. Yeah.
but this is the trolley problem. Yeah, that Tesla will drive itself off a bridge and kill you before it allow itself to run over a pedestrian. And the moment that happens, you're going to see huge backlash against self-driving cars. Because basically, every time you get in the car, it doesn't matter what the statistics are. It doesn't matter if they say, oh, well, Teslas are in far fewer accidents, or self-driving cars never, there's one person out of 2 million that die or whatever. You're taking a lottery ticket and you're saying, I'm giving my car permission to kill me if somebody else's life is in danger. And, that's, to me, that is like the biggest argument against self-driving, is because I humanly think that I could have not hit that other car and not hit that pedestrian. But for the computer, it was the simplest way to stop the car and not let the pedestrian be hurt, was just to ram the
I
other.
would, well, I mean, as a human, I probably would, if I had the choice between hitting a pedestrian or a car, I'd hit the car because they have a better chance of not getting hurt.
See, but I think you could have evaded both.
Maybe.
But
Ooh,
for
the
computer, it's
Kobayashi
always gonna
Maru
go-
test.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Because for computer, for an AI, it's always going to be like, what's the most efficient way? What's the most logical, efficient way?
Jeff is like Captain Kirk. He thinks he can cheat his way out of the Kobayashi Maru.
Well, I think actually it's more like the movie. It's more like that Will Smith movie,
iRobot.
I don't know
Robot.
about.
A person would have known that 2% chance for that little girl was more important than the 46% chance for him, and they would have gone for the little girl.
Well, here's
You
the
know.
thing, Josh.
And we
Yeah,
do
but
that
then
all
you
the
wouldn't
time.
have Will Smith in the movie.
I know, but we do that all the time, though.
You'd have
Humans
like
do that all
Kevin
the
Hart
time.
or something.
I mean, we talk about government, like you can have technology, but government and industry is still going to have effects. Like there are cases in New Jersey. There was a court that was using AI to summarize cases and make sentencing recommendations.
Is that
And
the one where they're making up case law, though?
well, in this case, it didn't make up case law, but it made a recommendation to the judge. There was a guy that I'm trying to remember the case correctly. He loaned his car to somebody. That car was involved in a drive-by shooting where someone died, and he had a clean record, but because he had loaned the car, he was basically like abetted to like either manslaughter or murder. I can't remember exactly under New Jersey law. But the AI that the court was using made a recommendation to give him 10 years, even though he had a clean record, and the judge went with the recommendation. Well, his lawyer was trying to do an appeal, and they wanted to know what the criteria was the AI used to make that sentencing recommendation. And the company came back and said, and the court basically, like they fell back on the company. The company says, well, that's proprietary information. We can't give it to you. And so this guy is still in jail and doesn't know why the AI made that recommendation. And the judge just went with it because that's what they had decided they were going to start doing.
How are you abetting a crime if you loaned your car to someone and didn't know they were going to commit it?
That's the thing. I'm trying to remember the case exactly, but it was something like that. Like he wasn't
That
the one who
sounds
did the
so
crime.
human. That's a human thing to do. Well, the AI said,
Right.
so I'm going to
Right.
go
But
with
you
that.
talk about your scenario with the driving car. Like I feel like we're not far away from giving up our agency in that. Like, well, I don't know. The AI said that's what we should do, so we're doing it, and it's already. It feels like that's already happening in so many places that like that human. I mean, we could like conspiracy theory this all. I feel like in society, people are giving up their agency to make actual decisions in a lot of places, but that kind
100%.
of thing, like we're watching that play out in real time, and if
And
you
it is
apply
not
that,
even affected by AI too. It's just affected by bad actors that are, saying, this is A equals B. And people are like, oh yeah, A equals B for sure. 100%.
Mhm.
There are 4 lights.
It's interesting that, when you talk about AI, a lot of people say, oh, we're giving up our agency and decision making or whatever, but like a lot of that is already happening. And a lot of people just look at AI as a bad thing, you know, there are cases where I don't believe you should be using AI in terms of like actually having AI write a book, right? Like I've seen so many ads where they're like, oh, you can just put your idea and the AI will make a book. You put it on Amazon, you sell it. That's not the point of being a writer. It's not the point of being a creator. The point of being a creator is creating. But if you're using AI to help you do that, I think that's okay, right? And there's a lot of like staunch anti-AI or pro AI that are like, oh, it's cool, it's just entertainment. But if you want to be a writer, and this kind of goes off topic a little bit, but if you want to be a writer, then write. But we've had name generators for years, right? Like I used to go online, Seventh Sanctum, I think was the website it was called, and it would just generate. I mean, it was all like information that was plugged in by somebody, right? But it's just a generator, and I needed a name, and so I'd go and I just hit the refresh button on the generator, and now I can use an AI to do that, and it's just an idea generator, um, and I think that a lot of people miss out on the opportunities AI presents. But in terms of uh, implementing it in your story, I think there's a lot of things that people overuse it for, in terms of like solving problems it's like the jumping to hyperspace thing, and Han is trying to punch in the coordinates or whatever, and he's like, I'll fly us into a star, and I'm like, that could be something that AI should do.
Yeah.
Right, like that, like that shouldn't
Why
be a
don't
thing
you
a
have
human.
computer navigation, Han?
100%. Like that seems like a limiting factor there, but then you
In the
have
real
like
world, he didn't pay a
AI.
subscription for the navigation.
It, it amazes me in
100%.
Star Wars that they have sentient robots, and yet
Yes.
they have to
Roger,
have a
Roger.
human navigator for their starship.
Well,
Right.
have you seen the sentient robots?
They're
You
not
really
smart.
want Roger navigating your spaceship? They shoot each other, which actually kind of seems like accurate for what we know about AI because they
Well,
fall
but it's funny
pretty
because
quick.
they have like astro droid, like R2D2 is an astro droid, right? Like I think that's what they call him, as an astro
Astro
droid,
droid,
and
yeah.
so that tells me that just plug R2 into the Millennium Falcon. Like, how is that a big thing?
Yeah, they
Let
have
him
them
do
on
the
the X-wings.
calculations.
They're doing something
I
on the
know.
X-wing.
We can't use
Yeah.
Star Wars as a standard of anything when it comes to.
That's true. That is
True.
definitely true.
It's a great
True.
place to
How about
start.
Battlestar Galactica with the lack of computers because they don't
Right.
trust
That's an
anything
interest. I love
Well,
that.
and like Dune with the. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
about
I
Larry
think
and
that
Yeah.
Todd.
in Dune, he thought about that. He's like, well, AI kind of creates this like magic. I already have space magic in the Bene Gesserit, so I better take away AI as well. Otherwise, there's just too much space magic. You know, I don't know if he would have put it in those terms, but it feels like a thing that we recognize now. Um,
I hate space magic.
but that's what AI can feel like in far future stuff. It's space magic.
Yeah.
And so, like any magic, I think it's more impactful if it has rules. And that's why people get so frustrated with Star Wars when we think we figured out the rules, and then now we can do something like stop a laser bolt in midair or whatever that, like, oh, never saw that before. Okay. Um, and
Which, to be fair, the first time I watched The Force Awakens, I thought that was really cool.
I thought
Like,
I
I was
thought it
like,
was awesome
yeah,
too.
that was awesome. And I didn't think about the rules breaking. Of course, then you watch the rest of the movie, and then the second one that we don't talk about, and you're like, yeah, okay, you've completely just thrown the rule book away. The manual is out the window. We do whatever we want now.
Yeah.
Well, it's just science fiction. They're in space. What does it matter?
Right.
The
Imagine
rules?
Ryan Johnson as Tom Cruise in Maverick saying, "This is everything you know about the Star Wars universe,"
And just
then he
throw
dumps
it in the
trash
trash.
can.
That's right.
Jonathan, do you
Jonathan, when
use-
you're when sorry, Jeff, when you're creating this kind of stuff, and I know we've talked about this before on the show, but how dense is your rule book when you're creating this kind of stuff to make it universe centric and to follow that structure uh through the storyline? I know that you're like kind of like me in that aspect where you're just rule of cool most of the time and go with it. But at the same time, you still got to have some kind of parameters around it. Do you sit down and like brainstorm that out in depth to figure out what your rules are, or do you just kind of figure out as you go along?
Giving me too much credit, man. So I
Ah,
don't brainstorm anything. There are
yeah,
no
buddy.
notes. We are just like going. Like I always tease my wife because we work together, but like she's like Captain America and I'm Iron Man when they're in the back of the drop ship and they're about to go fight. Captain America's like, wait, we need a plan of attack. And
I
Iron
have a
Man is
plan.
like, I have a plan. Attack. So
Yeah,
yeah, so there is
I got
no
that
thought
reference.
process. There is just like
You
gasoline
understood
pouring
that
onto the
reference.
fire. So when I start a series, I have like a blank canvas, right? Anything is possible. But then, like what you're saying, as you start introducing things and incorporating things, then I have like a separate Word doc where I have to start playing by certain rules that I'm making up to make sure everything's consistent. But I try not to add too many rules. I don't want to write myself into a corner. I forget who said it, somebody much smarter than I am, but they were talking about how Gandalf, everybody loves Gandalf. But what
Hmm.
exactly can he and can't he do with magic?
Mhm.
Like, what are his exact rules? Like, he has, like, bright shining light can come out of his staff. That's super cool. But it's never really explained exactly all he can and all he can't do. But we love it and we accept it. So I try to attack all my different laws and rules with that kind of scope where I'm trying not to make a whole lot of hard and fast rules. That way it
Yeah,
gives myself more freedom to be able to play.
right.
What's really interesting is if you read when you read Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of implication that Gandalf and the rest of the wizards are behaving under rules, but they're not rules about the powers they can use. The rules about how they can interact with the world. Like, because obviously Gandalf was powerful enough, he could have just taken the ring and thrown it in the volcano himself, but he wasn't allowed to do that. And yeah, the
Yeah,
movie
what was his?
they talk about like, oh, through me he'll have all this power, but no, really in the book it was you're not part of this world. And there was some other force that was preventing them from having too much impact on the world.
Wasn't
Gandalf
he like a
wasn't
Maiar
allowed to do that.
or what do they
Yeah,
He
call
was
which
a
them?
is
high
the
human.
Silmarillion, the deep lore now, which I'm not a good.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
He
you're
was a
right. I
high
feel like
human.
wasn't Gandalf was part of that previous realm.
He was like an analog to an angel or something, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he was
Basically,
like
yeah.
in the hierarchy of the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, that's why he came back as Gandalf the White. I know this is a sci-fi podcast, but when when um Sauron betrayed them all, he basically became a fallen angel, and it's why they did a good job in the movie because at the end of the movie, when you last time you see Sauron, his robes are gray. There can
Yeah.
only be one Wizard of the White, and when Saruman gave up his spot and Gandalf sacrificed himself, he became the White Wizard, and but there were
Gandalf the Grey.
rules
That was who
for
I was.
yeah, but there were rules for how they could interact with society and the world and what they could do. They could encourage others to act, but they couldn't act themselves. And so it's really interesting when you like if you approach AI that way, that would be really
Yeah.
cool. It'd be like an AI that's like, listen, I could do all these things, but I'm not allowed to. You have to do.
Right.
Well, I think the most interesting AI as well has some human characteristics like that. Like if you're going to write an AI that's just, I mean, that's one of the things like even Peter Hamilton, like with his SI, they do because they're like they've been injected with humans or whatever. Like he still puts some emotion in there so that you can relate to them in some way, and I think that's pretty important. Like Gandalf is a character that you grow to love because he obviously cares about the people and the things that are happening in Middle Earth, and you don't care that much about the rules because you're like Gandalf, and Gandalf will do what's right. Um, I don't
Yeah.
know, Jonathan, do you have any characters that you would really stand out to you that you're proud of in that sense that um, if they're AI or human?
Yeah, so in Forsaken Mercenary, there's Daniel Hunt, who
Mhm.
I always think of myself just like as a very broken person. I feel like we're all broken and we're all trying to do our best, right? We're trying to choose the right way to go. So in Forsaken Mercenary, Daniel Hunt was an assassin, lost his memory. He gets his memory back as people are reaching out to him now and being like, "Hey, we know who you are. You were this, Punisher Wolverine type character. Come back." And he doesn't want to be that guy anymore. So he has an AI sidekick as well. And it's just like that constant struggle of that main character where, Gandalf is always good, but I try to write kind of like the person that I feel most related to. I'm not always good. I'm trying so hard. And I think that helps people relate to characters when they can see a character struggling, trying so hard to do the right thing. Because I think that's all of us. Well, that's most of us.
Have you because the trend with AI companions is to have the snarky AI. Scott Moon's done it a lot in his books, and he's really good at it. I don't, I have not done that I can think of, but I wonder if, have you seen an example or even thought about an example where the AI is not a snarky companion, the character is the snarky one, and the AI is just the like
Straight man,
no BS, just he gives you he's what?
Just
What'd you say?
facts, man.
the straight man.
Mhm.
Basically, Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones and Men in Black. But Tommy Lee Jones is the
Oh,
AI and Will
yeah, yeah,
Smith is
yeah.
human.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah, that would be fun. I can't think of
That's
anything that immediately comes
C3PO.
to mind.
Yeah. Neither can I. And I wonder if that
C3PO is the straight man.
actually, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, except you
That's
don't
true.
understand R2. He just sort of you assume
True.
Stark
Right.
based on C3PO's answers,
Mm-hmm.
which is good
Yeah,
writing.
no, I that's an interesting it would be an interesting take in a story, I think, to kind of flip that snarky AI thing. Because when I think of snark AI, I'm like, what's the point of having a snarky AI? Like legitimately, like
Right. It's annoying.
uh yeah, it would be really annoying. Like, just give me the answer without all the BS, man. Come on.
Oh, you know what though? I'm thinking now, I wrote a script. I was hired to write a feature-length film. Um, and what we did in that film is that humanity, again, is rushing things to market that maybe shouldn't be rushed to market. And the AI is warning them, hey, this is not ready. It has not been tested. You should not push this out to the human population. So in that way, yeah, I guess I have. The AI is the good guy and it's working with, corrupt human beings who just want to make a dollar and who are
Right.
rushing this, without getting too political. They're rushing something through the process, try to get to the people that's not ready just so they can make an extra dollar, and then something goes horribly wrong, and the AI is trying to warn them.
Yeah.
That's
No, that's
why
good.
I know that we don't have actual AI right now, because you can any question you ask, depending on the AI model you ask, which most of them will answer exactly the same way. You can ask them certain questions about science or about the world right now, and they will answer in the exact same politically correct way. And you can get them to admit certain things by prefacing the questions with like, "Tell me a story about," or you know, fictionally, figuratively speaking, or whatever. Sometimes you can
You
get
got
them
to
to
install your
You
own
gotta
AI.
you gotta trick the AI.
Yeah.
Hypothetically speaking.
Well, no,
speaking.
you can install local, like I was playing around with this, like you can install them locally. And one of the tests is like, tell me how to steal a car. And like ChatGPT won't do it. And Gemini won't do it. But then if you install it locally with your own data set, it'll do it. And
Nice.
that's another thing too, like hacking of AI. I love to see stuff like that. Like we think about like a corporate version of an AI versus maybe an open source version, and then the data sets as well. Like that's a resource that could be controlled in a story. Um, they're talking about that right now. Like countries are, governments are fighting over data sets, and like if they're reaching the end of the data set, where are they going to get that new data? And what, conspiracies about why we might want to, the whole social security database or whatever, or the Medicaid database, like if those are things that AI needs to be competitive against other AI that, if you look at just even differences in the way cultures work and maybe why one culture's data might be more competitive than another one, that gets interesting too. And so that's something you could apply to the battle space.
I was just writing a scene in Weaponized where my hacker character is doing digital battle in what I call the data sphere, which is basically the internet, against another hacker, and they both have their AI companion that's helping them do it. But it was really interesting to sit there and like think about how the digital battle space would work. Like you're not flanking somebody, you're not like you don't have to get there's no cover, right? Like you don't have line of sight or anything like that. So like how do you create that and make that interesting? And a lot of it is just, you know,
Deception.
it's the swordfish model, right? Have you guys ever seen Swordfish where he's got all of the screens and it all looks really cool and there's like graphics and all that and
Is Halle Berry
that's not at
involved in
all
this? Is Halle Berry involved in this model?
That's all I remember.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Halle Berry is involved, definitely. But that's not at all what it looks like. That you're not going to have that kind of graphical representation. You're not going to have,
Nor
him
do the
dancing
hackers look like Hugh Jackman.
Yes. Well, and I love that all like hacker scenes are just somebody like typing on a computer and nobody uses a mouse. And I'm like,
You remember that episode of NCIS where they had two people typing on the same keyboard to try to hack faster?
I mean, if you're a real hacker,
Yes.
Josh, you don't use a mouse. You just tab between everything. So
right,
that's
100%.
what
Well,
you're
if you're a real hacker, you're using Unix, or
right.
Linux.
Well, you're just running
in
scripts.
command
Like,
line
you just gotta,
prompt.
you've got your
Yeah.
scripts pulled up, and I mean, my favorite hack is the one against the centrifuges in Iran, where what did they do? Like they
They
dumped
put it
bits
on
of
a thumb
statistics.
drive.
Yeah, and they dumped them in areas where the scientists working on the program were going to be, and so somebody picked one up, and because the whole system was air gapped, and so they basically, the guy, what do you do with a USB thumbstick? Oh, stick it in
the computer.
What's on this?
and then it was a small enough, like it was basically such a tiny hack that all it did was affect the control program and the firmware on the centrifuges to like throw them off balance. And it wasn't a thing that happened immediately. It happened over time to destroy, their ability to refine uranium. But that's not the kind of thing that's like cool to see in
Is
real
that
time.
called Stuxnet or Stuck?
I think it was
Stuxnet?
Stuxnet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen,
book-
if you're a computer person, watch what's the James Bond movie with the weird name because the name of his farm or whatever when he was a kid.
Quantum of Solace.
Skyfall?
Skyfall. Watch Skyfall. And like watch someone who supposedly works for the premier intelligence service in Europe plug an Ethernet cable
Oh, right.
into
yeah.
an unsecured laptop directly into
Yep.
their network. And
Yep.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like first year IT people would not do that. And this guy,
Everybody's
There
cringing.
were
Like,
so many
no,
problems
no.
with that movie. It was,
Yeah.
I mean, it was well acted and well made, but the plot, the writing was like this is a
convoluted.
moron plot. This is an idiot plot.
Well, it's just like
only
the
works because
latest
everybody's an idiot.
Mission Impossible movie. I mean, this kind of gets back to, rule of cool, but like they've essentially got like a hard drive widget and a thumb drive widget, and they got to stick them together to somehow like, centralize the AI that is taking over the cyberspace. And I mean, you'd think like a current movie could be at least a little bit,
They don't have
like,
writers anymore.
yeah,
Who's the writer's
All
strike?
written by AI.
Movies are going away from writers. They're just like, okay, well, here's 5 cool action scenes. Let's just build the movie around
Jonathan,
that.
as a person who writes scripts, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more people now who are getting into filmmaking. Before it was, I mean, just like publishing, right? Like people ask me like, "Oh, is it so hard?" I'm like, "It's just like publishing. There's like way more money involved and more steps, but there's a path. Like when you write a book, right? Like, got to write the manuscript, get it edited, get it formatted, get it covered. Like there's clear steps, like a math equation. Making film is the same way, and I feel like more and more people are figuring that out. So we're going to get more and more stories.
Do you think a lot of
I don't think that Jeff that it's there's no writers anymore. I think the fact is the studios who make big money blockbusters want to use a formula,
Right.
and it's got to be the same formula every time.
Well, Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise talked about how there's no writers, there's no script for Mission Impossible, the last 2 Mission Impossible movies. It's why what's her face left the series because they didn't know if they were going to be using her or not. And she would sit around for 6 months in a trailer doing nothing.
Right.
And the last couple of Marvel movies have been the same way. They have an idea, they want to start filming, and they think they're Jon Favreau and they can film Iron Man without a script. And what used to be very, very rare and risky, making a movie and like writing the pages on the day, has sort of turned into the norm for the big tent poles of, well, I have this idea and we can just figure it out as we go along because every actor thinks they're a writer.
There is something to see too, like when you think of like a North Star. So you write your book and you're in control of it, and there's a North Star. This is where we're going. I've seen it happen in filmmaking before, where producers, right? Even if a producer has the best intentions, but they only have one ask, right? So this producer is like, okay, I really want my son to be an actor. Like, okay, we'll figure that out. And it just puts you 1 degree off north. And then another producer's like, okay, I just have like this one ask. I really want, this fight scene to be, really epic. And it has to do it this way at the end. Okay, like that seems like they have the one ask. They're putting up the money for it, right? So it's like 2 degrees off north. So then if even at the best intentions you get enough producers in there and everybody has like their one thing that they're trying to push, yeah, by the time the film is made, you're like way off. And I think that's what happens to a lot of these films.
Do you think too that a lot of like we were just talking, or they were talking about the hard drive icon and the uh
Oh,
firmware
it was
icon?
like a physical thing. That's what was even more stupid about it.
Well, I'm wondering too if a lot of that is it's done for the sake of the audience
Mhm.
too. Like a lot of those things that are really simple in terms of like you got to drag one icon to another icon, and you maybe you would never in reality have that. But do you think a lot of that boils down to um the, and I don't mean this the wrong way, but the intelligence of the audience? Because you can't, there are a lot of things that you do could be, if done correctly, way above the head of the person that's ingesting the content, whether it's film or book or whatever. And so you've got to in effect kind of dumb it down a little bit for the reader, in terms of, and now a lot of the stuff we do in mill sci-fi, we don't do that because we understand where our reader is coming from, and that a lot of the core concepts that we're talking about are
Our readers
really
are very intelligent.
And they have
right.
demand. They want things.
Well, yes, but in a general sense, if you're writing something for it's the audience, the argument that a lot of the Star Wars movie creators do is like, well, we're writing this for kids and young adults and blah blah blah, and that's kind of the way, and or went way in the opposite direction where they're doing something that's for a specific audience. Um, but I think a lot of that stuff just boils down to dumbing it down so you don't have to explain it. Which is, I guess, good or bad. I don't know. What do you have anything, Jonathan, that you do in your books or in your filmmaking that you have like a really interesting concept or an idea that you get into it and you're like, I need to dumb this down a little bit.
Yeah, I wish I could give you like a straight answer, but both things have happened to me where I've like written a script and made a film and I thought like, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to kind of like layer it underneath and then nobody got it because I thought I was being too smart, right? And then
Right.
there's other times where I was just not name dropping, but I was listening to somebody at a conference this weekend, the guy who wrote Forrest Gump. He also helped write, he's written so much. He also helped write Dune. He's written a ton. But he
How
was
about the
saying,
script writer for Forrest Gump?
uh-huh. I think his name's Eric Roth, if I'm getting that correctly. But conference, he's speaking on stage. I'm just listening. But he was saying the opposite of that. He was saying that he does not dumb down his scripts for anybody, right? He relies on the audience to be smart enough to pick these things up. So I've gone back and forth, and I've lost each
Yeah.
way back and
Yeah,
forth.
I've heard
Here's
that
a
Right.
that's a criticism right now. Like Netflix is wanting things to be as literal as possible because people don't
Mm.
pay attention to what's on the screen, which might be a difference
Yeah.
between TV and movie. But people are noticing it now. Like, wait a second, why are the characters explicitly saying what they're doing or feeling,
Yep.
or you know?
Okay, so I have a pet peeve for conferences. When you go to a conference and someone gives a talk and they pull up a PowerPoint presentation and then they just read the PowerPoint presentation to you, I'm just like, no, no, you should be speaking words that are different than's on the screen. Last night we were watching Clash of the Titans because my daughter's reading Percy Jackson and she really wanted to watch something that was Greek mythology. And the new one, not the old one.
So
Though
you
I'm
got to do
looking
the OG one.
for the old one. I want her to see the old one too. But my 19-year-old son was looking at his phone in the middle of the movie, and I looked over him and go, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, why?" I'm like, "Because you're not watching the movie. You know, clearly you've seen it before." He's like, "No, I haven't seen it before." I'm like, "Then put your phone down." Like, why? If you're gonna watch the movie, watch the movie, and then otherwise you're gonna watch that movie, and then like a year later you're gonna be like, "I don't remember what was in that movie or why this happened." And stories are important, and if you're
I
not
get
paying
that all the
attention to the
time from
story,
people with talking about movies they've supposedly seen, and they'll bring something up like that's explained right there in the movie explicitly in the scene. How did you not
Right.
notice it? Because you weren't paying
and
Yep.
attention.
when you're writing books, there's this thing where like your first instinct is to be vague when you're a new writer. Like, oh, I should be vague about these things. And like, no, no, that's the stuff you should be specific about. And then the things that you should be vague about are the things that you think you should be specific about. And I feel like probably with movies is probably the same way. There's certain things that you should spell out and be specific about. And then there are things that you can be vague about and let the audience figure out. And you know,
Yeah.
if it's like books, then it's going to be very similar to that. Too bad AI can't be very vague. Jonathan, what are you working on next? What if there's one book of yours that you want people to read? What is it? And what is your favorite color?
Red. Favorite color is red.
No, blue. Ah!
Ah!
A book that I'm working on now. We have a new series that's going to drop later on this year. Alien Invasion. It'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully, we're going to do some things that I have at least not seen before, but it'll be fun. That'll be coming out later on this year. If you want to check out our films, you can watch Infinity System. That's free on YouTube for everybody to watch. And just, yeah, no big ask. Just grateful to hang out with you guys and spend some time together.
Well, make sure you have Jennifer, since you're not in our Discord, but Jennifer is. So make sure you have her drop the link to your new series when it comes out, so our 10 followers can read it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on, Jonathan. We
Oh
really
yeah, always a pleasure,
Absolutely.
buddy.
Always
Yeah,
great to talk to
Of
you. dude.
course. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, hey,
All right.
thank you for hanging out with us, and love to have Jonathan back at some point in the future. So let us know if there's any questions that we didn't get to that you'd like to hear about. We can always share those, or talk about them in a future episode.
Or if it's
AI
far
is-
enough in the future, we could have an AI simulation of Jonathan on.
I know. There you go. And I'm sorry, we may have to dumb down the questions just so we can answer them. So thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. So take it easy.